Iconic Academy Award-winning filmmaker James Cameron's movies have shattered box office records and entertained and enlightened audiences around the world. Mega hits like Titanic and Avatar wowed moviegoers with wondrous special effects and characters from other eras and other worlds. When Cameron isn't conceiving of his next blockbuster, he's a self-described warrior for the natural world, working to increase awareness about climate change and appealing to the masses to take individual responsibility for the health of the planet. I sat down with Cameron at a California climate conference and discussed the business of movie making and the bigger global mission. Take a look. What will the message be once you go downstairs? You're kind enough to talk to us right now, but obviously that's got to be in the back of your mind right now.
Sure.
The wheels are spinning. What's going to be your message?
Look, I think there are a lot of people out there, telling us that climate change exists, what the impacts are going to be, working in renewable energy and all the things that need to be done, working in transportation. My focus is a niche focus. When I go downstairs, I'm going to be talking about food. People think, what's food got to do with climate? Well, this is the big elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. When people think of how we mitigate climate change, they initially think of, coal-fired power plants and tailpipe emissions. Okay, you're good. There's a missing middle, because greater than the entire transportation sector of the entire world is animal agriculture. So here's a place where we can make a huge personal difference, you, me, everybody out there. We don't have to wait to build wind farms. We don't have to wait to build solar plants. We can just change what we eat. Just eat less meat and dairy, and your carbon footprint drops way down.
I saw an interview where somebody associated with Avatar said that before you started shooting that you took the cast over to Hawaii and you actually saw clear cutting in it, kind of this epiphany.
Right.
I want to talk to you about your epiphanies. What was it that created your epiphany about climate, and then about this linkage, food and climate?
I've always been very conscious of our impact on the environment. I'm a child of the 60s. So you had the big oil spill in Santa Barbara that was on the cover of Time magazine in 1969. And even though I was living in Canada at the time, I became very aware. So I've followed this for a long time. The big epiphany for me around the food-climate connection was about 3.5 years ago, because I had known how heavy the footprint of animal agriculture is and how devastating it is. It's the greatest source of biodiversity loss. It's the greatest polluter of water. Et cetera, et cetera. You go on down the list. It's horrific. But I thought, well, bummer, because I need to have my animal protein. That's just the way human beings are wired. 3.5 years ago, I found out that not only is that not true, it's actually the opposite. It's actually harmful to your body, and it contributes a lot to the kinds of diseases that we have, and so-called diseases of affluence, like heart disease and diabetes and osteoporosis and things like that, and a number of cancers. So I thought, wow, this is a win-win. I just cut out all the meat and dairy. I'm doing my thing for the environment, and I'm doing my thing for myself and my own longevity. And as a father, I need to be around to protect my family. So it just all added up. It was like, wow, where's the bad news in this story? There isn't any.
Are there aha moments, though? I mean, when you tell other people, do they start to, or do most people kind of, I don't get it?
A lot of people don't get it, but what we found, we spent the last 18 months and a considerable amount of money with Chatham House, which is a think tank in the UK, and they did some demographic surveys. They went to US, Brazil, China, Europe, and they found some interesting things, that people, they want something to do about climate, and they're generally ignorant of this food connection. And when they find out, when they're a little bit educated about it, they are more willing to change than if they don't know about it. So, that's why I think it's a positive feedback loop. We tell people about it. Now they're going to do something that's better for them, and then the nation gets healthier, and then our healthcare costs go down. So all of our entitlement stuff, our debt, is actually reduced. Our environmental, our carbon footprint goes down. We're helping the environment. At the same time, we're making ourselves healthier. People just need to hear about it.
Let me ask you about Food Choice Task Force.
Yeah.
What is it? How'd you get involved with that?
So the Food Choice Task Force is a small group of committed people who are hoping to get some media presence out there about these issues. Because there isn't much. There's no sort of film you can go to. There are only a handful of books. There's not much out there, but the facts are so compelling.
I watched Avatar this weekend. I hadn't seen it for a while. And there's a line, Jake has this speech, and he says, "We need to send a message to the sky people. They cannot take what they want.
this is our land.
Right.
That seemed like a clarion call to your audience, like, look, you guys can look to leaders to change the world, but you've got a responsibility as well.
Exactly. That's really interesting that you perceived it that way, because it was written from an indigenous perspective, like, this is our land, we were here first, you can't come and take it. But your spin on it, I think, is actually really empowering to the average person, which is, this is all our land collectively. Even planet Earth is all our land collectively. And if you think of the leadership, the governments of the world, they have to be responsive to our health and our needs and the future of our kids. You know, and I think, you know, leaders are only starting to wake up about this because people are demanding it.
Well, to continue on, the other thing that struck me about the film, and I guess looking at it from a distance now, at the end, Jake's eyes open.
Yeah.
And another message to the audience,
right.
like, open your eyes.
That's right. It's about seeing. I mean, the movie is all about seeing, about changing our perceptions. Jake comes in as a typical kind of Western civilized guy with a kind of militaristic perspective, and he's there to conquer. And he opens up, and he has his own connection to nature. He begins to see nature the way the indigenous people do, and he ultimately winds up defending it. Well, that's the journey we all need to be on. We all need to become warriors for the natural world. Regardless of how much you like polar bears and that sort of thing, we have to do it for ourselves, because we have to have an organic living world that works together, and the only way to do that is to play by nature's rules.
But it isn't preachy.
No,
I mean, you have to really kind of strike a balance, don't you?
You do. You can't preach. I think what Avatar tried to do was not say, okay, here are the horrors, this is climate change, all those sorts of things. It said, this is the beautiful thing that we tend to become disconnected from, you know, nature and its harmony and its balance. And it reminds people of that feeling you had when you walked in the woods as a kid, and we all have it. And then we move to cities, and we get into an urban, very digital lifestyle, and we just wake up one day and say, I miss that, you know? And I think, I'm not saying everybody needs to move to the country. Take a walk in a park, go to a sequoia forest, whatever it is, but you can't protect what you don't respect and love.
How do you see the relationship between the U.S. and China as far as films? Where is that going in the future, do you think?
Well, I think everybody's leaning forward from both sides in a really positive way. You know, Hollywood has woken up over the last few years, and my first forays into China from a business perspective were just kind of at that moment where everybody was starting to wake up and say, wow, this is an enormous market. If you look at, you know, Avatar was the highest grossing film in history in China. I think it's since been supplanted, but not by very much. And that was at a point when there were probably a third of the number of 3D theaters that are in China now, just you know, a few years later, 5 years later. So I think everybody has pretty much agreed on the fact that it's going to be the biggest cinema market probably by 2018. But it's all a fairly new relationship. We're still in the romance period. You know, and there are issues with getting films from the U.S. played there. I think the studios are starting to look beyond just competing with each other to get their films into the China market, and they're thinking, how can we form long-term business relationships with Chinese producers, Chinese funds, and so on, so that we can help China make not only better films for its own internal market, but films for a global marketplace in the same way that, you know, America makes films for a global marketplace. Not because everybody wants to see American films, it's because all the filmmakers from all over the world come to Hollywood. Hollywood is just a state of mind. It's not really a place. It's just a gathering place for filmmakers from everywhere. I'm Canadian, for example. You know, so the question is, can we get China to that level?
And the answer is?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, there are cultural barriers. Sometimes you know, China's got amazing sort of landscapes. It's got amazing cultural mythology and so on. But you know, they have to understand that they've got to play for a world market. So are there Chinese filmmakers who are willing to make a film in English, which is kind of the common language globally, for example, and then it gets translated into all those different things.
And that's the leap that has to occur, you think?
Not necessarily. I mean, Chinese films for Chinese consumption are making so much money because they're 1.3 or 1.4 billion people, so they've got a great domestic market to serve as well. What is exciting to me is that they've, in a sense, they've skipped right to the best form of projection, which is digital 3D. They sort of cut out the middle bit that we had to go through. So if you look at the exhibition capability in China. It's fantastic.
James Cameron, thanks so much for your time.
Great interview. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
That's it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media. We are CCTV America on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And now you can watch Full Frame on our mobile app, available worldwide on any smartphone for free. Search CCTV America in your app store to download today. Get the latest news headlines and connect to us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Weibo. All of our interviews can still also be found online at cctv-america.com. And let us know what you'd like us to take Full Frame next. Simply email us at fullframe@cctv-america.com. Until then, I'm Mike Walter in New York. We'll see you next time.